Ian Golding,
Aye.
Dave LaFleur,
Aye.
Maureen Phillips,
Aye.
Joe Topham.
Aye.
Thank you. Staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Joanne Dodd,
Aye.
Jeff Carlson.
Here.
All right. Anticipated speakers on the agenda, please respond in the affirmative. And I might miss some of you because the screen's kind of bouncing around, but I will announce you at each item. So Arthur Reed,
Here.
Marty McGowan.
Hello.
Hi. Caroline Baltzer,
Here.
Ryan Maxwell,
Here.
Art Gasparo,
Here.
Mark Ritz,
Here.
Jeff Blackwell,
Here.
Paul Santos,
Here.
Karen Beattie,
Here.
and then I think we have Rachel Slozak.
Here.
Okay. So good evening. This open meeting of the Nantucket Conservation Commission is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order, which you can find posted with the agenda materials for this meeting, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment. For this meeting, the Nantucket Conservation Commission is convening by video conference via Zoom app, as posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that all attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you and to take care not to screen share your computer. Anything you broadcast may be captured by the recording. All supporting materials that have been provided members of this body are available on the town's website unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless I note otherwise. We are now turning to the first item on the agenda. Before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, the chair will go down the line of members, inviting each by name to provide any comments, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Further, please remember to mute your phone or your computer when you are not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. For any response, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you and state your name before speaking. If members wish to engage in conversation with other members, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself. And for items with public comment, after members have spoken, the chair will afford public comment as follows. Staff will activate the chat feature on YouTube. Members of the public who have comments or questions can use this feature to communicate with the public body. Instructions are on the town's website. The chair and/or staff will do their best to address questions and/or comments. And finally, each vote in this meeting will be conducted by roll call vote. So with that, we will begin our meeting under public meeting, public comment. I'm not sure, Jeff, do we have any public comment at this point?
No.
Okay. So I will open the public hearing. The following items are continued this evening. Under notices of intent, we have Nantucket Islands Land Bank, all land bank properties continued until March 25th. We have Weisenberger at 84 Pocomo Road, continued until March 25th. Troja Nominee Trust at 26 Easy Street is continued until March 25th. We have Goran and Melinda Poljic at 14 Almanac Pond Road, continued until March 25th. Sweet Meadow Sylvia Lane LLC at 74 Westchester Street is continued until March 25th. Oh, there's one more. And then under certificates of compliance, we have Sweet Meadow Sylvia Lane LLC at 74 Westchester Street, continued until March 25th. So with that, we will begin our meeting under notices of intent with Moline at 27 Winoma Way, and this is represented by Jeff Blackwell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The notice of intent that is before you is for the construction of a beach stairs to serve an existing building. The stairs and the landings total 54 feet long and will allow the property owner passage down to the shorefront area and to walk by with just foot traffic over to the ocean. The stairs are proposed to be supported by helical piers, which will be installed with a hand-carried driver head. And the difference between the human traffic on the face of the bluff is roughly equivalent to that if 4x4 or 6x6 posts were being installed in the face of the bank. But the helical piers should be a neater and more structurally stable installation. The bottom stair of the steps will end about 7 feet before the coastal dune field begins, and that is the closest wetland resource area to the project. And if you have any questions, I will try to address those.
Thank you, Jeff. Are there any questions or comments from commissioners? Maureen?
I had one well, I guess a couple. First of all, how were they accessing the beach before? I'm just curious how they were doing that.
Through the chair, I'm not aware. The people that just purchased the property had not, they've owned the property for less than three months, I believe.
Oh,
so
okay.
They have no historical access point.
Okay.
I don't know what the previous owner was doing to, if anything, to get down to the water.
Okay. And through the chair, Jeff, also so I see it's the bottom of the stair is what you said within 7 feet of the bottom of the coastal bank. I mean, it's in terms of what's the risk of erosion here? I mean, I just, what's the, if you will, is this just sand? I mean, how is this, what is this being put into, and is erosion going to be a concern? Or how soon would erosion be a concern, do you think?
That's a good question. Just within my time of living on Nantucket, there's been differing rates of erosion along this stretch of the town Lever shoreline. About 15 years ago, there was a highly erosive cycle taking place for several years. But in the last 10 years or so, that erosive cycle seems to have stopped. And in general, this area of shoreline has been very stable. It's just going to depend on systems and dynamics that are beyond my ability to predict or understand, and also storm events of a particular direction. It is all sandy soil, and the bank is very well vegetated, so the slope of the bank is in good shape and not eroding itself. Once you get into the dune field and then onto the coastal beach, the sands are less consolidated, but the bank is well consolidated, and the helical piers will give a very stable support to the stairs.
Thank you, Jeff.
It looks like Jeff Carlson, did you have a comment?
Jeff said, I was just going to kind of confirm to Maureen that the bank there from kind of top to bottom is pretty heavily vegetated, and there's still
Okay.
some sparse dune grass out in front of kind of the bottom of that bank that gets out just a little bit. That kind of comes and goes depending upon the year, but the bank itself is completely covered in vegetation.
That's good. Photograph might have been helpful, but that's fine. Thank you.
Joe? Oh, you're muted.
No, I'm wondering if we should do a partial where we have a wood structure and then a retractable aluminum stair, if that's kind of especially on, I don't mind it so much on the, North Coast, but I think on the South Coast, that's more prevalent where we see those retractable stairs. So just an opinion.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up, Joe, because I thought the same thing, and I was particularly nervous about that lower landing being a little bit large, because that's the first thing that's going to get undermined in a storm.
Yeah, and I'd like to see no risers on the stair as well.
It looks like, Mark, you had a question or comment?
I did. When I look at the Google 24 when I'm away, it shows it on the other side of the road, on the inside of the road. I want to make sure we're dealing with the right property here. Jeff, can you help me with that at all?
This is number 27, Mark.
It's 27 Winoma Road?
Winoma
Oh, the
Way.
application says 24.
Where does it say 24? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I beg your pardon. It's 27. I read it wrong. 1,000 pardons.
All right.
Question answered. I too would support the issue of a retractable, at least the last half of the stair. I know this is one of the chronic problems with beach stairs and trash on the beach. I would think it would be helpful to have the last half be retractable.
Thank you, Mark. Looks like Ian has a comment or question.
Yes, I would prefer there wasn't the landing down at the bottom too, that it was just straight stairs, because I think it would be less obtrusive, and that's an issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. Any other questions or comments from commissioners? Looks like no. Jeff, do we have any comments from the public on this one?
No, you do not.
Okay. So Jeff Blackwell, would you like to go back to your client with some of our concerns?
Yes. In response to the suggestion that the aluminum retractable stairs would be better, I'd just like to point out that the base of the stairs are at elevation 16, well above the 100-year flood zone, and certainly not subject to wave action. The separation between the bottom of the stairs and the actual flood zone or ocean where you would have active erosion is significant. I would say it's on the order of some hundreds of feet. I would agree with you about the aluminum retractable stairs. on in different oceanfront settings, but in this one, I don't believe they're necessary and aesthetically to the extent that you care about the aesthetics. I think the wooden stairs are preferable in that they will be stable. Having said that, I will ask for a continuance to discuss this with the owner and also to provide some additional information regarding the specifics for separation to the beach and so forth.
Thank you, Jeff. It would be great to get like some site photos as well as the erosion rates out there.
Okay.
Jeff, well, Madam Chair, if I may, through you, I just would like to add, Jeff, number 21 to the immediate west, and then the house to the immediate east. Neither of them have the platforms down at the bottom. So I'd ask you to take that into consideration from my perspective. Thank you.
Thank you. I will.
Anything else for Jeff to try and get before next meeting from commissioners? Looks like no. So Jeff, would you like to continue this until March 25th?
Yes, please.
So we will see you on March 25th.
Thank you.
Thank you. So that moves us on to Nantucket Island's Land Bank at 15 Commercial Wharf. This is represented by Art Gasparo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm before you tonight with a notice of intent application for a property located down on Commercial Wharf. This is immediately adjacent to the Petrel Landing property that I'm sure you're all familiar with. The land bank has acquired this structure. This was Mickey Rowland's building where his office was, and the proposal is to remove the structure and any rubble associated with it, support completely from the site. And there's also a buried propane tank that will be removed, and a deck, that sort of thing. And then just to, for now, restore the site to match the surrounding existing grade and just put down a conservation mix for right now. There's also a bench that will be maintained out there, at least one for now. There's a condition on the Chapter 91 license. The land bank has also gone to DEP Waterways about the temporary modification of the license for the removal of the structure, and we've included that correspondence in the application. So we believe that, and I'm sorry to be clear, the work is all located within land subject to coastal storm flowage, as well as within the buffer zone to coastal bank and coastal beach. I believe that it's a pretty clear net benefit to remove the structure and make it an open space area for the public. I'd be happy to take questions or concerns that you might have.
Thank you, Art. Are there any questions or comments from commissioners? Looks like no. Jeff, do we have any comments from the public on this one?
No, we do not.
Okay, do we have everything we would need to close?
Yes.
Okay. Commissioners, one last shot if you have any questions. Looks like no. All right, Art, would you like to close?
Yes, please.
Okay, is there a motion to close? Looks like motion made by Joe. Is there a second? Seconded by Seth. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Arisman, aye. Golding,
Aye.
LaFleur,
Aye.
Phillips. Oh, you're muted, Maureen.
Aye.
Perfect. Topham.
Aye.
Right, that carries unanimously. Thank you, Art.
Thank you.
And that moves us on to Abrams Point LLC at 34 Shakamo Road, and this is represented by Brian Madden.
Hi, good evening. Sorry, my camera's not activating. Can everyone still hear me though?
We can hear you just fine.
Oh, there we go. All right, thank you very much. Brian Madden from LEC representing the applicant. The application very simply is to add a proposed cart path. Joe, if you don't mind zooming in a little bit on that specific area, it's in the southeasterly portion of the site. There's a proposed cart path extending off of the existing pervious driveway. There's an existing grass path that connects these two properties, but a portion of that extends into the 25-foot buffer zone. So we're proposing to abandon the portion of the path within the 25-foot buffer zone to that down gradient coastal bank and bordering vegetated wetland system, and relocate that outside the 25-foot buffer. The proposed cart path is just a 7-foot wide path with two stone dust track paths, with the interior being grass. The extension goes through a landscaped area, and the proposed revegetation area, it will be planted with arrowwood and sweet pepper bush. And we are requesting a waiver for that to increase that setback. And I'll turn it over to questions.
Thank you, Brian. Are there any questions or comments from commissioners? Maureen? Oh, you're muted.
So is the neighbor 36 Shakamo that's there also doing this cart path? We have them on for an amended order tonight.
Yes, it's under common ownership. The
Right.
two properties. Yeah.
The two parcels are, okay.
Yes.
And yeah, so are they going to be, I guess my concern was, are they going to be doing the work? If we approve both of these, are they going to be doing the work at the same time? You
Yes,
know,
it would be
in
done
order
together.
to avoid further, disturbance of the resource area. Okay.
Yes.
So thank you. I wanted to be clear about that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from commissioners? Looks like no. Jeff, do we have everything? Oh, are there any questions from the public on this one?
No, and yes, you do have everything you need to close.
Okay, perfect. Brian, would you like to close?
Please.
Is there a motion to close?
Motion to close.
Motion made by Joe, I think seconded by Dave. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Arisman, I, Golding,
Aye.
LaFleur,
Aye.
Phillips,
Aye.
Topham.
Aye.
Right, that carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. And that moves us on to Thomas Keegan at 41B Cliff Road, also represented by Brian Madden.
Thank you very much. Brian Madden from LEC. This property spans, it's a long rectangular parcel that connects between North Beach Street and Cliff Road. There's a coastal bordering vegetated wetland system in the northeasterly portion of the site that primarily occupies the majority of the northwesterly portion of the site. Northeasterly portion of the site, excuse me. Proposed work is all outside of the 50-foot buffer zone to that BVW. It basically involves reducing the existing grade to reconstruct an existing stone patio within the outer 100-foot buffer zone with some slight realignment and expansion. And to accommodate the proposed grade lowering, there will be 2 to 3 foot tall retaining walls on either side of the north and south property line, just for a small stretch extending into the 100-foot buffer zone. There are some additional work proposed, but that's outside of the 100-foot buffer zone. And the erosion control is shown on the plan, but it basically encapsulates the work footprint. And there will be a small little concrete set of stairs into the embankment that will be removed as part of it. And I'll turn it over to questions.
Thank you, Brian.
Thanks.
Are there any questions from commissioners? Oh, Jeff?
It's just not a question. When we did our site inspection at the toe of the slope, kind of down by the bottom in the vegetated wetland, there's a couple of piles of debris that are down there. It looks like some old timbers and things. I guess it's just a question through you, Madam Chair, to the applicant, if they'd be willing to pick up that material, just haul it out by hand or do what they need to do. Because it looks like it's not a lot, but it's definitely not that naturally occurring.
Yes, certainly be willing to remove that by hand. And yeah, I recall when that structure was actually intact, but that's no longer the case. So we'll certainly.
It's been a while.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jeff, for bringing that to our attention. Jeff, do we have any questions from the public on this one?
No, and you do have all of the required information.
Okay, perfect. Brian, would you like to close? Oh,
Please.
Ian?
I'm just wondering how obtrusive the stone wall will be to the actual, to people going in the street below, because we had this issue with another application, didn't we?
Are you referring out to Cliff Road?
Yeah. So, but the actual application that we talked about this was on Cobblestone Hill, the house to the west of Cobblestone Hill. We were worried that the wall there would affect, just the general aesthetics. I'm just curious of, I can't really visualize what it would look like, unfortunately. I guess that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I would say, just based on street view from Cliff, you can't see behind that house. It's a very narrow lot, and it basically does span the width. There is the driveway on the east side, but you can't see into the backyard from Cliff Road.
No, I'm talking about from North Beach Street, Brian.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's mature trees down abutting the wetland. It would be visible from North Beach.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yeah, thank you for your question, Ian. Any other final questions or comments? Looks like no. So Brian, would you like to close?
Yes, please.
Okay, is there a motion to close?
Also move.
I'm gonna give it to Dave, I think, Mark, because he had his hand up, but I'll give you the second. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Arisman, aye, Golding,
Aye.
LaFleur,
Aye.
Phillips,
Aye.
Topham.
Aye.
Right, that carries unanimously. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
And that moves us on to Wendy and James Douglas at 339 Pulpus Road, represented by Mark Ritz.
Good evening, Mark Ritz from Site Design, representing the applicants at 339 Pulpus. What you have before you this evening is an NOI requesting the construction of a small porch on the south side of the house. The porch will be located entirely outside of the 50 and encloses an existing set of stairs and basically builds out on another small porch. And that is located away from the wetland resource area on the upland side of the house from the wetland. The other component of this NOI is that the applicant is requesting to do some brush cutting within the buffer zone to the wetland, specifically between the 25 and 50. They are proposing to leave 50%, greater than 50% of the area as native vegetation. And what they would like to do is remove the underbrush and vines that are choking out the trees. They are not proposing to take any trees out, just to get rid of the underbrush, and they're not proposing to seed it with grass. They just want to kind of maintain it so that all the vines that are crawling up the trees and choking them out aren't there anymore. And that's really the extent of the brush cutting, and that's shown by the hatched area on the plan. That's pretty much the extent of the project on this one.
Thank you, Mark. It looks like Joe has a question or comment.
Yeah, through the chair. Mark, do you think just cutting it, don't you think the vines are going to grow back? I mean,
I think that they would like to maintain, sort of regular sort of mowing and cutting in that area, allowing, kind of a low native vegetation to come in. But the point is really to kind of maintain it and let the trees flourish, but they don't want to seed a lawn.
okay. I just didn't know if you wanted to get in there and hand remove some of the vines. I find in my yard, if I cut something, next thing you know, I've got like 3 other ones growing. So I've now just gone and remove the vines.
I'd imagine that probably as part of that the stuff that's really tangled and nasty, I'm pretty sure that whoever's doing the cutting will yank it out, or but
Okay.
but the intent is really to get the vines out of there.
Okay, thank you.
Mark, it looks like Seth has a question or comment.
Yeah, if I may, do you have any understanding of what species of vine we're talking about?
I am not sure actually what's out there. The last time I was out there, dealing up close and personal with the vegetation was in deepest, darkest winter, and my skills at identifying in that season are not the best. I know that my dear friend Greenbrier was there, and I'm fairly sure that there was a lot of bittersweet as well.
Yeah, I mean, if I may, in some of these cases where there's really aggressive vine entanglements, cutting them, unless you get all the way down to where the root source is, isn't really effective. I'm not going to tell the applicant exactly how to proceed, but in some ways doing a herbicide treatment might be much easier and much more effective than doing just vine cutting.
If that's something that would be effective, we'd be happy to do an approved herbicide treatment to get rid of them, because really, yeah, that's really the intent. It's not a landscaping intent in this case.
Yes, I mean, sorry for the back and forth, if I may, Madam Chair, but I think we would need to know what species we have to deal with, what their invasiveness or potential invasiveness is, and kind of an estimate of the area we're talking about. It might just be native aggressive things like grape or poison ivy, or it might be a significant amount of invasive material. And if it's really a lot of invasive material, and the goal here is to, help the trees survive and maintain a more effective habitat, then I think doing a beneficial herbicide treatment, in my opinion, just as one person, is a good way to move forward. But I can't say that without having a species inventory.
Mark?
Just to answer, we'd be happy to do that. We're waiting for a sign off on heritage on this anyway, so we'd be happy to take a closer look at the species and provide a list, and then possibly come back with a proposed herbicide treatment for the next round, since we have to have a next round anyway.
Yeah, thank you. I think that would be a really great idea, and thank you for bringing that up, Seth, because also if a lot of these species might be invasive, then the trip to the dump is different as well for the landscapers doing the job. So they should differentiate between those species. Not that there would be a lot of berries left on vines this time of year. They've probably all been eaten, but you want to minimize spreading that stuff around.
Okay.
I think Ian had his hand up and then Joe.
I did, Madam Chair. I'd like to see some photographs, and I assume, Mark, that it's already demarcated, the 25 and the 50?
They were at one point, but we can certainly refresh them because we took a look at this fair amount of time back, so we can refresh the demarcation in the field.
Great, thank you. And if we could have some photographs next time to see with what we're dealing with, please.
We'll do that as part of the species evaluation.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Joe and then Maureen.
Find through the chair, Mark, I find a lot of those invasive vines go over and take over trees. So there is no leaves, there's nothing. It's when you remove the vines or they're finally dead, all you have is just this empty tree stalk. There's nothing there. So I'd like to see if some tree is dead that is replaced so that we can get some of the habitat back in that area. But, and also I think that line that you're going to cut at the 50 foot, I like that delineated so the cutting doesn't progress further into the wetland. Thank you.
Do that.
Thank you, Joe. Maureen.
Yeah, through the chair, Mark, I was having trouble just understanding what exactly was going to happen in the 25 to 50 buffer, because in different places in your explanation, it says the, let's see, project description, and that's your page 1 of 4, it says. We've got, and maybe I'm just reading this wrong, it says the proposed brush cutting will occur within portions of the 50-foot buffer zone. And then you go down to the next page and it says the brush cutting will be located entirely outside of the 50-foot buffer zone. And then
I apologize. That may have been a typo or.
Okay, because I'm reading this, and then on the last page it says 50% of the area between the 25 and 50 will remain as native vegetation. So I wasn't clear what was getting brush cut and what wasn't, and where. And I think getting some pictures would be helpful, because I was trying to figure this out looking at the site map, and it didn't help me enough. So it would be good to get that just settled one way or the other. So we're clear about what you're going to be doing where. So thank you.
We can certainly provide more information, but on the site plan, it's the area that's shown with the black crosshatch where we're actually proposing to do the cutting. And there is a lot of air buffer zone on the west side of the property that we're not touching or proposing to touch. So I will clarify that with photographs and a little bit more narrative when we come back with the herbicide proposal.
Thank you, Mark, because I actually had the same kind of point of confusion as Maureen when I read through the narrative. But then when I looked at the plan, it did look like the brush cutting was all between the 50 and 100, right? Not between the 25 and 50? Or did I misread that?
There is a portion, I believe there, well, yeah, I guess they redrew. So yeah, so it's all between the 50 and 100. My apologies. I believe an earlier iteration had a little bit going into the inside the 25. It is all on the very north side. There's some between well, anyway, I'll clarify this. I'll update a plan with a better shading. I'll clarify this for you guys to make it a little bit easier when we come back. I apologize for any confusion here.
Thank you, Mark. Any other questions or comments from commissioners? So, no. Jeff, do we have any comments from the public on this one?
We do. RJ Turcott from the Nantucket Land Council entered in for us a question that said, how is the extent of brush cutting inside the 50 buffer being calculated. Is this something that could be included with applications going forward? So I'll answer that for Mark because it comes up a lot on these applications. So the way that we've traditionally looked at that percentage of area between the 25 and 50 being disturbed, and it's important to remember that that performance standards is only relative to bordering vegetated wetlands. It doesn't apply to dunes or banks or any of the coastal or some of the other inland ones. Is we look at the buffer zone area in totality for the locust. So in this case, where the wetland kind of bisects the lot, is there's buffer zone on both sides. And when we calculate that percentage, is you're looking at that area as a total. So in a really rough example, if you had 1,000 square feet on each side of the wetland for 2,000 total, is if you did brush cutting on the other side, if you were under 50% of that 2,000 in totality, you would meet that performance standard. So in lots where they get buffer zones like this, where they get some area that's going to be left undisturbed, that helps them out with the calculation. On other sites where it's just a kind of a linear fashion, it's a little bit easier to see. So that's how we've calculated that since that rule kind of came to fruition in the kind of the early 2000s. So that's hopefully explains that for everybody.
Thank you, Jeff. Was that our only public comment?
Yes.
Okay. And then this needs to continue 2 weeks for heritage, correct? Okay. So Mark, this will continue until March 25th?
Please.
Okay, perfect. We'll see you then.
Thank you.
And that moves us on to High Tide Partners LLC at 8 Ackermuck Way, Lot 2, also represented by Mark Ritz.
Once again, Mark Ritz from Site Design, representing the applicants at 8 Ackermuck, Lot 2. What you have before you is a request to redevelop an existing developed residential property, including removal of a house, construction of a pool, construction of a pool house, and some very minimal grading. All of the proposed structural elements will be located outside of the 50-foot buffer. All of the proposed landscaping and grading is going to be located with very small exceptions. If you look at the site plan, the orange line is our proposed limit of work and silt fence. You can see the existing brush line, which is shown by that cloud symbol, extends just a few feet beyond that on the east and west sides of the property. Everything else that we're altering is already existing landscape and lawn area, so we're barely touching any of the existing native vegetation, just cutting a few feet back in and kind of squaring it off. The grading that is proposed on the wetland side of the property really consists of just straightening out a couple of contours, very minimal grading. It's not like the much more extensive cutting that was proposed on the lot next door. And that is pretty much the extent of the proposal on this project. Most of the house footprint is largely within the existing house footprint, which will be demoed. And we are proposing a little bit of grading and filling work, more extensive filling work on the portion of the property that's outside of jurisdictional areas. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mark. Are there any questions or comments from commissioners? Maureen?
I do this with some hesitation because I think the last time I asked about a tree, Seth told me it was a tree that was worth nothing and I should not be concerned. But where the pool in between the 50 and the 100, there's the proposed pool, and there's, I think, a tree, if that's the right thing that's drawn there. And I'm just wondering what that tree is, and do we care?
Mark, do you know what?
Do you know what that is?
There are a number of smallish oaks that were planted and landscaped on that side of the house. And they are proposing to take down the ones that were the one in that pool area,
Right.
and one right adjacent to the house corner. But all of the
Oh, I see, right.
all of the native trees that are, that are closer to the wetland and that are in the vegetated area, they're not proposing to touch.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Ian?
So, Madam Chair, I get nervous when there's sort of a vague proposal for grading without cross sections. And also I'm curious as to how this is actually going to affect runoff down to the wetland. And so I would like to see it much more specifically drawn for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. And Ian, I have to agree with you. I am very nervous about runoff in this location, given that the patio is going to go kind of right to the 50, and then we have a very wide open spot leading to that little wetland. And I was actually going to ask if the property owner would be willing to revegetate that at least a little bit to make it more of a walking type path, or something to try and slow or stop runoff with plant material. Mark?
If I may, just to clarify on the grading, if Joe can throw the plan back up and maybe zoom in on the area at the head of that existing vegetated lawn area that goes down to the pond. Those contours shown in the heavyweight black line there, the numbered contours. For example, the 25 contour, the contour underneath it in faded gray is the 25-foot contour. We're just literally straightening these out a little bit. We're not we're just regularizing a few contours, 24, 25, and 26 in this area. We're not adding any significant fill. The contours just wander around a little bit, and we're just straightening them out a little bit to basically to bring them around the patio and to flatten out the edge of that lawn area. We're talking, we can provide a cross section if it'll help, but we're talking about 6 to 12 inches of fill at a maximum in this area. We're not talking about any heavy grading. This is really just straightening out and evening out a few contours.
Thank you, Mark. I know I'm still concerned just with the general grade leading down to the wetland with the additional hardscaping that's going to go up top. So I'd still like to see some sort of something done leading to the wetland, because that just seems like it's a giant track allowing runoff to go down there. So that is still a concern for me.
And if I may, Madam Chair, so I appreciate you clarifying this, Mark, but I still worry about contractors' mission creep. So a cross section for a part to make it absolutely clear what is being proposed would be a help.
We can provide that.
Thank you, Ian. Any other comments or questions from commissioners on this one? Looks like no. Jeff, do we have any comments from the public?
We do. We have a number, so I'll compile them all, and hopefully Mark can try to answer them as best possible. So all of the comments are from Alan Morton, who I believe is in the butter to the east. He's asked if any other structures can be built on the site. Are all the existing structures being removed? There is a ditch for water runoff between 6 Ackermuck and 8 Ackermuck. Will that be preserved? And then He also asked, I see lot 2 and lot 3 on the plan. Is there a lot 1?
Mark, you got those?
Lot 1 was the one that we came before the commission a few months ago to do a house to the, if you're looking at the plan to the left, and we received approval to do that several months ago. Lot 3 is simply the, it's the driveway access lot. It's not a buildable lot. In terms of existing structures on the property, all existing structures will be removed. And as far as I know, any drainage ditch that is between the two properties that's straddling the property line, we're not proposing to do any grading. Our closest proposed grading to the shared property line is approximately 8 to 10 feet away from that line. So we're not proposing to alter any drainage ditch in that area.
Thank you, Mark. All right, does that do it for our public comment, Jeff? Okay. Any last comments from commissioners? So, Mark, would you like to continue this for 2 weeks?
Yes, we'll continue for 2 weeks if we may, and we'll provide additional details on the grading and discuss potential for any revegetation of that existing lawn area with the applicant.
Thank you, I appreciate that. So this will continue until March 25th.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so that moves us on to amended orders of conditions. We have Baltzer at 66 Hulbert Nominee Trust at 66 Hulbert Avenue, represented by Paul Santos. We also have Arthur Reed on and Caroline and Robbie Baltzer.
Thank you. For the applicant, Paul Santos with Nantucket Surveyors. This is the second amended order of conditions request for the property located at 66 Hulbert Avenue. The property is actually bounded to the north by Hulbert Avenue and to the south by Wall Street. And by way of a brief description of the original order and the first amendment, this was a case where we relocated the structure from 60 Wall Street and relocated it to the present location. In doing that, we removed an existing garage, approximately 640 square feet, that was partially located within the 25-foot and 50-foot regulated setbacks to your regulations. The property is completely located within land subject to coastal storm flowage, but we do have a unique situation where we have a small isolated vegetated wetland that is located bordering the property, partially on this property and partially on the property to the west. We came before you 2 meetings ago, I believe it was, to discuss the relocation of the garage at the front of the lot around Hulbert Avenue. And that order was ultimately approved. That work was approved by the commission. We, however, separated out, if you recall, the work associated with providing handicapped access to the original structure at 66 Hulbert Avenue. The plan before you has been amended to address concerns and that the commission had at that prior meeting. So the application before you tonight, we are seeking to expand an existing deck, add access stairs to the relocated cottage, and provide handicapped accessibility along with other landscape improvements to the site. All the work, as I said, is within land subject to coastal storm flowage and the buffer zone to an isolated vegetated wetland. So to start kind of at the existing dwelling, you'll see the handicapped access, which is located along the westerly portion of the structure. This provides handicapped access to the living area for Caroline's mom, who resides at 66. The prior application had a much more detailed ramp an access area which encroached significantly more into the 50-foot setback. The application before you still has the access within the 50-foot setback. However, it is limited to a narrow access way, minimum code requirement to provide access to the two doors that will be located in the area of the living quarters and I believe the kitchen or living area at 66 Albert. The ramp itself has been moved to the north and will be completely outside of the 50-foot setback. So this is a revision to that kind of area that we had previously came before you with, and tried to limit as much as we can the necessary structure within the 50 in order to provide the handicapped access. We are also expanding the existing deck in the front, and that all occurs outside of the 50-foot setback. It is within jurisdiction as the entire lot is subject to your review. What we've done in the back portion of 66 Albert, there was an existing shower that is located right on the fringe of the 25-foot setback. And there's a boardwalk that provides access to a rear stairway. That shower platform has been removed. And we are also willing to remove that section of the boardwalk along the back section of 66. That gets additional structure that's inside the 25 out, and also gets the additional shower, or the existing shower that is there outside of the 50-foot, outside of the 25, but that's within the 50-foot. That would be moved out to the front portion of the property. The area of the relocated structure, or the structure that we moved from 60 Wall Street, we previously had approved the front porch area with a recessed stairway, providing access to the main door. Due to building code requirements, we're having some issues making that access way work with the recessed stairs. We were able to do it on the north portion of the porch, and you can see those stairs are in place. Those provide access to one of the doors at the dwelling. However, we're unable to do that at the front door, so we're asking to put a 3-foot wide landing in the front of the porch area. It occurs within the previously approved 5-foot wide walkway that we had entering from the parking area to the structure itself. And just to go back, the area that was located where the previous garage was, that area is completely going to be post and rail fence that area is completely been planned to be revegetated with arrowwood, winterberry, and native species. That area will continue now all the way towards the front of the structure, towards the handicapped access ramp. Marty McGowan, I believe, is on the call also, as is Arthur Reed. Caroline and her mom is also on, and we're happy to answer any questions that the board may have with regard to the application. Again, the application is an amendment to an original order. It's actually the second amendment. We do have waivers in place that were granted for the initial construction and relocation of the relocated dwelling, and we have asked for a continuance and expansion of those waivers through this amendment. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Paul. Are there any questions or comments from commissioners? Joe?
Paul, I just want to say thank you. This is exactly what I was thinking. I think it's perfect. So I really applaud you guys for working with us. Yeah, just thank you.
Yes, I agree with Joe. I was very happy to see these revisions, because I know it wasn't easy to do. So any other comments or questions from commissioners? Seth?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is probably for Jeff Carlson, but are we able to condition that handicap access structure to only function as a handicap access in the future? And if there's any change to that intended use, it be removed in case of property ownership change or other circumstances?
Sorry about that. So to answer your question easily, it's really hard to regulate use, unfortunately. It's one of the things that's difficult because there's no way to really police or track. And I appreciate the question for what's there because not to sound like glib or short, but if you say it's only available for handicap use, if someone else goes up the ramp that's not, in need of the ramp, is that violating that condition? And I think that's the part that's really difficult. And then having an action triggered under ownership to remove it. Let me put some thought into a minute, but I also think that's difficult to do because it's related to the use again, which is something that we're not really able to regulate.
Thank you, Jevin. Thank you, Seth, for bringing that up because I remember that discussion last time, and it was definitely a concern for me as well. Joe, did you have a comment or question?
So I was just curious, I mean, to follow up on Seth, if we can't condition it that way, could we just say it remains a deck and not habitable space as option B?
Jeff, what do you think about that one?
I think that's probably a little better because again, just to kind of explain it, right? So if you're permitting it, the use you'd have to relate to how it's impacting the resource areas in question. And if it's been constructed, I think it's been constructed. I think that's how you see, sometimes the appropriateness of conditions related to use, like you can only use this kind of boat in this area because of the depth of the water or things that are there. I think in a case like this, it's much more difficult to do. But I think if you said that the area is to remain, open decking space and not be enclosed, I think that would be appropriate. It makes me happy to see Arthur Reed shake his head yes, because
Yes, I'm
sometimes when I'm thinking as I go, it's always nice that old sage, like Arthur agrees with me.
Well, I'm an old sage with a dog in this hunt, so after all, I'm not just being altruistic. But yeah, that's I think that makes sense, and I think that's the appropriate way to handle it.
Thank you for your perspectives.
You're welcome.
Any other thoughts, comments from commissioners?
Well,
it looks like Mark has a comment, and then Ian.
Through the chair, could Paul remind me why the handicap access couldn't be in the front of the property, the fronts on Hobart Avenue?
Oh, it couldn't be fronting. Oh, it's because of the architectural layout of the house, Mark, I believe, and anybody can chime in, Caroline, her mom can chime in, but we're providing direct access to the doorway for Caroline's mom's living area, as opposed to coming through the center living room, I believe. And I think it's directly related to that particular reason. And in fact, I think they're actually creating new access doors to get direct access into that living area.
May I follow up?
Yep, go ahead.
But there is a front door, isn't there, Paul?
Oh, yes. Yeah, if you go to the front, I believe there's pictures there, Mark. Let me just see. There is a.
Yeah, no, that's what I thought. Thank you. No, I'm good. Okay,
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, Ian, did you have a comment?
well, thank you, Madam Chair. And I was going to say something to Arthur about how I felt he could wear two hats sometimes. But yes, I made it clear that I shared Mark's reservations and I wanted to see it on the east rather than the west side, so this wasn't an issue. I agree with Joseph that they've done their best to take our concerns into place. And ideally, I'd like to see it conditioned so that if it changed ownership, that it was removed. But if that's not possible, then I think conditioning it so that it can't actually become an integral part of a future dwelling would protect our interests. So So this is why we get paid the big bucks, right, Arthur?
Every 2 cents of them.
Yeah. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ian. All right, so if there are no other comments or questions, Jeff, do we have everything we would need to issue the amended order?
Yes, I think in this case, you would make a motion to close and issue the amended order as conditioned.
Okay. Would somebody like to make that motion? Motion made by Joe. Is there a second? Seconded by Maureen. So by roll vote, Beal,
No.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Arisman, I, Golding,
Aye.
LaFleur,
Aye.
Phillips,
Aye.
Topham.
Aye.
All right, so that carries with Commissioner Beal opposed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
And that moves us on to Nantucket Conservation Foundation Incorporated, Windswept Bog, Barnard Valley Road, represented by Karen Beattie.
Good evening. I'm Karen Beattie, and I'm the Director of Science and Stewardship for the Nantucket Conservation Foundation. We're requesting an amended order of conditions for a permitted invasive species removal project, which was permitted on August 21st, 2020. It involves treating a total of 1/4 acres of common reed or Phragmites australis on the foundation's property at Windswept Cranberry Bog, which is on the south side of Pulpus Road. We began treatments in regards to the project in fall of 2020. The Phragmites populations are being treated using clip and drip herbicide applications, specifically using rodeo. We are not requesting any changes to the permitted herbicide application, but rather we're seeking permission to allow management for improved access to actually do the treatments. In our, the access in our original request requested permission to do hand cutting with clippers to better access the Phragmites where they were interspersed with dense shrubs. We originally requested using clippers only because we were concerned about soil disturbance. And we did not request permission to use mechanized equipment. In the fall of 2020, when we started doing our treatments, the 2 smaller patches that are actually within the former cranberry bogs, we were able to treat them successfully with no issues. However, once we got into the interior of the main patch, we encountered really dense grapevine, greenbrier, and other shrubs that were interspersed with the Phragmites, and it was basically too dense for our applicators to access. These are people that are carrying bottles of herbicide and wearing rubber gloves that rip really easily. So having to bushwhack through dense shrubs is really prohibitive when you're trying to treat. So what we are requesting is management work to improve access for this, for future treatments this coming year. And this is based on an on-site consultation that we had with Jeff Carlson, who generously agreed to meet us on site and look at the conditions and give us advice on how to proceed. So thank you, Jeff. We would like to conduct strategic mechanical brush cutting of the shrubs within the densest portion of the main patch of the Phragmites. We want to do this in the late summer and early fall when the soil conditions are dry enough to avoid soil disturbance. When we worked out there this past year, the soil conditions were completely dry. And this would be aimed at improving access for treatment during the following year. The brush cutting would consist only of the above ground portions of the shrubs. So with the overall goal of reducing the shrub height to 1 foot or less above the soil surface. The estimated area that we're proposing to do brush cutting in would be approximately 1/10 acre or less. So we would only do this in the areas where the shrubs were really, really dense and access was really difficult. We would do this work no earlier than August 1st. We want to avoid impacting any nesting birds, and we would only do it if the soil conditions were dry and unsaturated, which is typically the case in the late summer and fall. We do not propose to do any excavation of soil or root systems because the overall goal is to let this patch of shrubs grow back once we're done treating the area to get rid of the Phragmites. We've done a lot of brush cutting on our properties in the past, and our experience overwhelmingly is that native species of woody shrubs are highly capable of resprouting if you do not disturb the roots and you just let them grow back. So we don't have any concerns about any of these plants being able to grow back once we're finished with these treatments. Because the Phragmites is a highly aggressive plant, it's basically a grass. It grows every year, 5 to 6 feet tall. So the following year after we do the brush cutting treatments, the native shrubs would only resprout and grow to about a foot or 2 or 2 to 3 feet in height, whereas the Phragmites will grow much taller, and it'll make it a lot easier for us to walk in there and target the Phragmites first with the shrubs. And once all of our initial and follow-up treatments are completed, we propose to allow all of the native shrubs to grow back without any further brush cutting. An additional item that we're requesting along these lines is that we are in the process of doing a very comprehensive botanical survey of the property. And over the course of the past summer, we have located another site within one of the cranberry bogs where we've detected a very small population of Phragmites that we didn't know was there before. We've also located some invasive weeping lovegrass and black swallowwort. And we expect that the conditions out there might be conducive for the Phragmites to spread. So we would like to request permission to do proactive treatment of the other invasives that we do find on the property as we proceed with our inventories, which we're doing to get ready to do a major wetland restoration project on the site. And it's our goal to try to get rid of as many invasive species as possible before we do move forward with wetland restoration out there, because we don't want to avoid trying to spread these species. We would consult with the Conservation Commission on any other species that we're going to manage out there in regards to best management practices, and we would be limiting the species that we're working with to only those that are listed on the Massachusetts prohibited plant list or are recognized as highly invasive, likely or invasive or potentially invasive by the Nantucket Invasive Plant Species Committee. So that pretty much summarizes the what we're requesting in this amended order, and I would be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Karen. Are there any comments or questions from commissioners? Looks like no. Jeff, do we have everything we'd need to issue the amended order?
Yes, you do.
Thank you. Is there a motion to issue the amended order?
Also move.
Motion by Mark, seconded by Joe. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Arisman, aye. Golding,
Aye.
LaFleur,
Aye.
Phillips,
Aye.
Topham.
Aye.
All right, that carries unanimously. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you very much.
That moves us on to Safe Harbor Realty Trust at 2 Harborview Way, represented by Ryan Maxwell.
Thank you. For the record, Ryan Maxwell with Bracken Engineering. This is a request to amend an order of conditions for work within land subject to coastal storm flowage, which was issued back in October of 2017. On the plan, you can see the proposed changes in red. So the caveat to the request is that the proposed changes have actually already been constructed. And this was brought to our attention when we went to file for the COC, and our as-built didn't match the design plan. So this amendment request is to bring the existing permit into compliance. That being said, the structures as constructed do have all the necessary flood vents and flood proofing that FEMA would require in this situation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ryan. I know, I have to admit, projects like this really concern me, like the after the fact amendments because like who's watching the permit? You know, like I know you guys applied for it and are on the permit, but are you regularly checking in with contractors to make sure that they're following the plans?
Yeah, generally, I'm not sure exactly where the ball was dropped on this one. Typically, we're sent plans a number of times throughout a project, and that's where we do our check on things. So with this one, I'm honestly not sure what happened, what went wrong.
Right. Thank you. And I don't know, again, when we have cases like this, like I almost feel like the contractors need to come in too. Because if they're like designing on the fly, you know, they need to know that that's not appropriate.
Oh,
And Seth, I think, had his hand up, and then Ian, I'll go to you. Seth?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I agree with what you're saying. After the fact approval never is a good feeling for me. I think the substantive changes that were made here don't have a negative impact on the resources we protect, but I'm wondering if they're, you know, this probably is probably for Jeff Carlson, but I'm wondering if there's any way in the amended order of conditions that gets issued to just reference the fact that you know, the work was initially done without the benefit of a permit, and this amended order is reflective of that, just so it's with the history of the project there.
Yeah. Jeff, do you have a reply?
Yeah, I do. So typically in situations like this, in the project description, where I usually write, you know, this order is amended to include. In situations like this, I usually put this order is amended to include the after the fact, something to that nature, however you describe it, but it definitely memorializes that the work was done prior to the permit being issued. And just a little backstory, not to try to help out Ryan or try to explain it a little bit. I think sometimes this is a problem that happens where, you know, on a lot of these projects, you have a surveyor and an engineer and an architect and, you know, a GC and then the homeowner. This is one, you know, looked at it a little bit when it first came in and at the COC, and after a little bit of digging, it seems to me what happened was they came in and they got their permits in the order where they came to the Concom, and then they ended up going to the HDC, and in the HDC process, they end up amending the architectural design somewhat, and porches get extended, and people say, I already have my Concom permit, and don't think about it, or it's a different one of the different entities that's working. And they come back, they forget to come back sometimes to the Concom to amend their permit. I know it's happened opposite directions before as well, but I think some of the problem also lies within the fact that the order of permitting with those folks isn't always as helpful as it should be. And there's not enough back and forth sometimes between town departments as far as what's going on and changes that are made, or not an easy way to step through that. Again, I'm not saying that's what happened for sure here, but just with the dates of approval, it looked like they made some changes as they went through permitting and forgot to catch back up with some of their earlier permits. So for what it's worth, that seems to be a little bit.
Muted. Ian had a comment, and then we'll go to you,
Yeah.
Joe.
I do. And, you know, I not only take a dim view, I say, you know, don't issue an amended permit until they remove the porch. And the word will quickly get around that they better pay attention. And Mr. Maxwell, that's completely impersonal, I can assure you. But we have this happen more times than, you know, than I have fingers and toes. And so I'm not very happy with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. Joe?
Yeah, I just kind of feel like the reconfigured steps to the north, I feel like I'm not going to allow the storm flowage to go through, where I think it was just a single stair. I think that's why I approve that. I think as it becomes this whole wraparound stairway that connects to the garage, I think that that's going to become a problem. And I'd like to see photographs or go do a site viewing of this property. Yeah, I'm not really hip on giving an as-built approval after the fact.
Thank you, Joe. Any other comments or questions from commissioners? Looks like no. So is it the consensus that we would need to see this site or at least see photographs before we would issue? You know, that's what Joe made it seem like from his perspective.
Yes.
Okay.
And in a word, and
I
I'll
agree
leave
with
it.
that.
Okay.
I'll leave it at that.
Looks like Dave as well would like to at least go by the site and see some photos. So
Me too.
and Maureen as well. So Jeff Carlson, is this something we would want to schedule a site visit with the entire commission for this site? Is that something we can do right now?
I think if we all drove separately, we probably could. Or, I mean, certainly I don't want to make it sound, it's not the most remote site. I mean, it's right downtown. So if people want to go look on their own, they certainly can. I mean, it's right on the corner of Harborview Way and
Pretty easy
South
to
Beach
get
Street
to.
there. So, but if you guys like, I mean, we can pick a time and go if you guys would prefer. Or if you let me know, and if you just want me to come with you, I mean, literally can be there in less than 2 minutes from where our office is. So it's up to you guys.
Thank you, Jeff. So with this conversation, Ryan, would you like to continue the amended order for 2 weeks to allow the commission to do a site visit?
Yeah, we'll do that.
Okay. So this will continue until March 25th?
Sounds good.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That brings us to Shakamo One LLC at 36 Shakamo Road, represented by Brian Madden.
I thank you, Brian Madden, for the applicant. This is an extension of the cart path that you heard earlier on 34. There's only a small portion in the southwesterly portion of the site that's within the 100-foot buffer zone. And aside from that landscaping right at the property line, the cart path extends through existing lawn areas and then reaches goes on the other side of the driveway. As part of the amendment request, there's also a proposed greenhouse just east of the driveway, well outside of the 50-foot buffer zone. And that essentially is it. And I'll turn it over to questions.
Thank you, Brian. Are there any questions or comments from commissioners? So I know I had one, and I realize it's separate from your proposal, but the shed that's like right next to the wetland buffer, is there any way they would move that? Or is that water dependent?
Yeah, it has been a historic structure on the property, and it is utilized quite a bit for storage purposes. I realize its location, but again, it's been there for a long period of time.
I consider doing any revegetation. It just was like glaring to me on the plan with its location.
Yeah, I think there may be some opportunities as that path extends from 34 to 36, the existing grass path that was in the 25-foot buffer zone, to continue some of that plantings, fill in some of those areas. I think they'd certainly be willing to do some of that.
Okay, thank you. Just with all the kind of development on this property, it's like, it would be nice to get that out of the wetland buffer because it's just so close.
I agree.
Any other comments or questions from commissioners about this project? It's like, no. Jeff, do we have everything we would need to issue?
Yes, you do.
Okay. No, there's not really much we can do for the structure. So Brian, would you like us to try and issue the amended order?
Please.
Okay. Is there a motion?
Well, is it issue the amended order with the conditions that you wish to see fulfilled attached? I'm not quite sure I understand what the amended order is here.
Yeah, so I don't, thank you for that question, Ian. I don't know that we can attach those conditions in this case. Honestly, but I don't know if other commissioners have perspective there, or if they wouldn't issue, as a result of that shed. I think that's what would be the turning point here, I guess. That kind of answer your question, Ian?
Yeah, it does.
Could I just state something?
Yep, go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, just to be clear, so certainly I think the applicant would be willing to revegetate a portion of the lawn area within the 25-foot buffer zone that extends into from 34 onto 36. But the amendment request before you is not requesting any waivers. Again, it's all within existing lawn landscaped areas. Understand the concern relative to the shed, but it is the applicant's desire to keep that.
Thank you, Brian. All right, so with that, is there a motion to issue the amended order? Motion made by Seth, it looks like seconded by Dave. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Arisman, aye, Golding,
Aye.
LaFleur,
Aye.
Phillips,
Aye.
Topham.
Aye. But
Great.
Brian, could you just let the client know that we do have concerns about the shed?
I will.
Thanks.
Yeah, especially with properties that are kind of being redeveloped so much and adding paths and greenhouses, you would think it would be feasible to move that shed. So thank you for passing that along.
Will do.
All right, so this passes unanimously. So thank you, Brian.
Thank you very much.
And that moves us on to Nantucket Islands Land Bank, Washington Street and Consu Springs. This is represented by Rachel Freeman and Guthrie Diamond.
Thank you, Ashley. I am here tonight before the commission presenting an amended order request for our property at Washington Street. I don't think that's the right figure. Nope. Okay. Neither of them.
They're the only two I have right now. Which figure would you like? I can go get it.
Okay.
The ones online are different.
Okay. What do those ones online look like?
They show 20-foot vegetated buffer and it shows little trees.
Yay, that's the one I want.
Okay.
Whatever
I'll go
is
get it. Give me a second.
Okay.
Yeah, I think both sets of drawings were in our packet. Some were.
Yeah, I included.
I only pulled those two. I know there's multiple. So hold on one moment.
Including two that look like abstract paintings that you'd get to see in MoMA, I might add. The color scheme is pretty astonishing.
What are you talking about?
He hasn't been into an art opening since COVID, and he's
apparently doing a lot of finger painting at home.
Okay.
I can do a lot with PowerPoint.
Guess it's all spring fever, I think, at this point.
All
Yay.
Yes, exactly. Yep. That first one is perfect.
Okay, great.
Thank you, Joe. So we had originally come in with an application that included bulkhead repairs across the bike path and on this property, which is map 55 parcel 415, but doesn't have a great address. It's really just Washington Street or the Washington Street extension. We only had posts along the back side of the abutters' residences. And we were pretty much going to be minimalists about it and do a little bit of privet removal, but that was about it. After meeting with the abutters and considering this, the land bank would prefer to have a vegetated buffer between the house and the lawn area. It's and a split rail fence and a board fence. The board fence is about 100 feet long, would be 4 feet tall with 4x4 posts, and is directly abutting the bike path area or the Washington Street extension. And that first 100 feet of fence would be board as you progress towards the ocean, and then it would turn into 200 feet of split rail fence. We would leave a small buffer, 5-foot mowed grass buffer between the fence and the vegetation. And then our intention is to plant purely native species. And I don't have a list at this moment, but I can certainly provide you with a list. But there were going to be no cultivars, and it's going to be straight natives and basically shrubbery with the goal of providing some screening for the neighbors. The other change to this original order was requesting that we could put topsoil along the lawn area and install irrigation, because it turns out that area was actually where they dumped dredge spoils from the harbor. So it's the first 18 or plus inches is a very, very, very dense shell layer. And there's a reason that the grass isn't growing there. So we'd like to overseed it with a conservation seed mix. And if we need to, we'll put down a little bit of topsoil, but installing irrigation will be necessary to get these shrubs up and going. And probably the lawn, although the lawn we can water, but mostly the shrubs will definitely require irrigation going forward at some level. So those are the proposed changes at this time. The only thing that is within the 50-foot buffer is what's shown in the red rectangle. Everything else that we're proposing is outside of the 50-foot buffer. So we would not propose to install irrigation or use any topsoil or spread conservation seed mix inside of the 50-foot buffer. So I'm proposing to install a silt fence along that buffer and just not do any work beyond that point. The only thing that has to happen abutting the bike path, where I suggested that we did need to work within the 50-foot buffer, is we're going to change the configuration of that fence so that there's pedestrian access. And I believe there's some privet there that will be removed. So I think that is it. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rachel. Are there any, looks like there's a question from Joe and then Seth.
Is there a shed in that near the red rectangle you have, Rachel? What's in that?
I don't know what that is. There has been kind of a ton of stuff in that area, but we've been gradually cleaning it out. That was not a permanent structure. It is no longer there.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Seth?
Yeah, thank you. I'd support the use of irrigation to get like the vegetation established, but I would definitely want it to be temporary.
Jeff?
So I can answer Joe's question. So we also looked at that area that had been through there. That area was used by the abutter to store boats and some other trailers. And I think we figured out that that used to be like a trailer that they had set up that had just like a sheet of plywood on top.
Okay.
And some other wood for hauling whatever, but it is definitely gone from there now. So something on wheels.
Thank you, Jeff. Ian?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, Rachel, what would be the water source for the irrigation?
That is up for discussion right now. I will tell you that if it is going to be town water, that we will be using it sparingly because we try not to spend money on town water to irrigate properties. But there was some discussion if it was just upstart or irrigation that it might come from the abutter's house. But so at this point, I can't exactly tell you. There's one of two options.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from commissioners? Looks like no. So Jeff, do we have everything we would need to issue the amended order?
Yes, it looks like we do have one public comment.
Okay,
I'm just waiting for it to get typed.
perfect. Give them a minute.
Ashley, if I may ask a question, remind me of what the hedge will be. What are they going to plant for the hedge?
Rachel, do you know that information?
Yeah, you know, embarrassingly enough, the list is in my email. But I remember it's straight natives because I said we couldn't put anything else in, and things that are relatively salt tolerant. So for example, beach plum was one of them, Prunus meridoma. I think Baccharis omnifolia was another one. I believe there was a rose, but it was not Rosa rugosa because I said that was not going to fly. I think it was Rosa caroliniana. But like I said, I'm more than happy to provide you with a full list.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right. I have our public comment now.
Okay.
And it just is, it's from Burton Balkan, and he just says, is there a path there now to access the beach?
Rachel, do you have an answer for that?
Yes, you can walk down. Well, I should know the fence is such that you can't pass. The fence right now that's shown in that red area is a full fence, so you could walk around the edge of it. But yeah, people are more than welcome to continue down the beach. There will be an accessible path to the beach. It's not well demonstrated there, but basically the land bank land abuts town land. And as of right now, you can walk to the beach, and I wouldn't expect that would change.
Thank you, Rachel.
Mm-hmm.
Joe?
I'm just happy to see when we signed over this land to the land bank that it's being utilized and there's a plan going forward. I really like that this is in place. So thank you, Rachel, and everyone at the land bank.
Great. Thank you.
I agree. I feel like I can really see the harbor walk around coming together.
Yes.
So it is really great. Yeah. So if there are no more questions, I think we have everything we need to issue the amended order. Would somebody like to make that motion? Motion made by Joe. Is there a second? Seconded by Mark. So by roll vote, Beal?
Aye.
Engelborg?
Aye.
Arisman, aye. Golding?
Aye.
LaFleur?
Aye.
Phillips?
Aye.
Topham?
Aye.
Big is chiming in with an I as well. So that
Mhm.
carries unanimously.
I thought it was Ian's bike horn.
Right. My whoopee cushion.
She's melting down over here, so it'll probably be the rest of the meeting. So we are moving on to requests for determination. We have 6 Shakamo Road Realty Trust at 6 Shakamo Road, represented by Art Gasparo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm before you tonight with a request for determination of applicability for essentially a sewer connection where we are going to switch over from an existing on-site septic system and connect to the recently installed municipal system in Shimo. Shown in blue is the border and vegetated wetland boundary, green's the 25-foot buffer, and the red line is the 100-foot buffer. Also shown in red are the proposed components. There's an existing septic tank, which would be crushed and filled. And then we'll put in a grinder pump system and a force main, which runs primarily outside of the buffer zone, but down the driveway and out to Shakamo Road. And then there is some native plantings proposed on the following sheet within the buffer zone as well. And that with the limit of work no closer than 25 feet to the resource area. I'm happy to take questions or concerns that you may have.
Thank you, Art. It looks like Seth has a comment or question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On the planting schedule, there's a few things that concern me in the shrub section. There's a Little Henry Virginia Sweet Spire and a Hartledge Wine Ralston Sweet Shrub. Those are 2 cultivars. But I don't think we have the native plants of either of those. I know Itea virginica we don't actually have on Nantucket, so just getting revisions to that. And then also Carex radiata. Sedges are a little bit confusing. I know we have Carex pennsylvanica on island, but I don't believe we have radiata, so just checking that.
It looks like Jeff, you have a comment.
Yeah, so the one thing with RDAs, if you guys do decide to issue out, you do have the ability to condition RDAs, so you could require native species with no cultivars with a -3 as well.
Thank you for clarifying that, Jeff, because I was concerned when I saw the extent of the planting under an RDA and what our kind of abilities were there. So thank you. And thank you, Seth, for bringing up those plants. Any other questions or comments, Joe?
So through the chair, Art, what's going to happen with the mixed meadow to the existing tree line of the 25-foot? Is that going to get filled in or what's happening there? It seems like there's a gap.
Meadow.
See how Julie has the mixed meadow and then you have delineated, looks like existing vegetation on Julie's plan?
Yeah, if I may, through you, Madam Chair, we show the work, these are kind of 2 projects happening simultaneously. There's an approval for work that happens on the property to the west.
Yeah.
And on the property that we're talking about, where we have the keep existing plant material, I don't think anything's going to happen in that area. They're basically, it's kind of a big stand of large cedars within the red line. And then I guess I'm otherwise not clear where exactly you're referring to.
Well, I mean, Joe, if you can go up to the left. Yeah, go a little left. And I know it's on the other property, but I didn't know if this, where you're seeing both properties, if it was owned by the same ownership. That's
they're in common control, different titles. And so we have a separate order of conditions for the work on number 6.
All right.
So the approval tonight would only be referencing the property to the east, number 6.
Okay, so when that other one comes in, I'll have that question then. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions?
Just one, if I may, through you, Madam Chair.
Yep, Art.
Seth went pretty quick. Honestly, these, the plants this came from Julie, and I would like to give feedback to which plants you would like me to have her change, and if it's okay through you to Jeff, we could provide a revised plan if that's how you'd like this to occur.
Thank you, Art. Seth, is that okay with you?
Sure.
Yeah, and I think as long as we can condition the RDA to be only native species, no cultivars, I think between these two things, hopefully we will rectify the situation.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to belabor it, but if you could just use the common names real quick and tell me which ones you want me to tell her to change, that we can go kind of quick through that.
No worries. It's let's see here.
The sweet shrub.
The Virginia sweet spire and the Ralston wine, whatever that is. Let me just zoom back into here. Just the Hartledge wine, Ralston sweet shrub, and the Virginia sweet spire.
Those two.
And then also the wood sedge, just double check. Carex genus is really complicated. I know we have Carex pennsylvanica, the Pennsylvania sedge here, and there are other sedges, but I believe, if I'm remember it correct, that isn't one that we have natively, but just double check that one.
Thank you. I got it now.
Thank you. It's an important point to clarify.
I just have to say it. You better sedge your bets, Art. All right, I'll be quiet.
I got it. It's a good one.
Hedgely.
Yes. All right. So with that, is there a motion to issue, or excuse me, Jeff, what do you recommend here for the RDA? I'm losing it.
All right, I would recommend the positive 2A on the resource area boundaries and then the negative 3 as conditioned for the work.
And do we have to add anything that they're native cultivars?
Yeah, so that would be the condition that they're native with no cultivars. And then if you wanted to continue to say that the final planting list will be approved through commission staff, you can do that too.
Okay.
It's up to you guys.
I think we probably do want to add those conditions in. So would somebody like to issue with a positive 2A and a negative 3A? And what Jeff just said?
So moved.
So motion made by Dave. It looks like seconded by Seth. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Arisman, aye. Golding,
Aye.
LaFleur,
Aye.
Phillips,
Aye.
Topham.
Aye.
All right, that carries unanimously. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
And that moves us on to Nantucket Realty Trust at 27 and 29 North Liberty Street on 34 Westchester Street and 8 Westco Place, represented by Art Gasparo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm before you tonight with a request for determination of applicability to confirm the resource area boundary, which was delineated by David Haynes. And it's shown as flags. The line is not blue, but you can see the dash double dot line on the plan prepared by Jeff. And that's the extent of the proposal before you tonight. There's no work included. It's just to confirm the boundary.
Thank you, Art. Jeff, has staff been out to look at the site?
Yes, we have looked at it and reviewed the data forms provided and agree with the delineation as shown.
So do you have a recommendation for this one?
Yes, sorry, 1 second. I'm just having minor technical difficulty here. Yes, I would recommend the positive 2A confirming the resource area boundaries.
Thank you, Jeff. Would somebody like to make a motion to issue a positive 2A confirming the resource area boundaries?
Motion issue.
Motion made by Joe. Is there a second?
Sure, seconded by Big.
Right. Seconded by Ian. Thank you. So by full vote, Deal,
Aye, Wolf.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Arisman, I, Golding,
Aye.
LaFleur,
Aye.
Phillips,
Aye.
Topham.
Roof.
Right.
Aye.
All right, so that carries unanimously.
Thank
Like,
you.
every toy has a squeaker, so it's not even like I can take them all away. Thank you, Art. So that moves us on to certificates of compliance. We have Nantucket Islands Land Bank at 35 Almanac Pond Road, and we have Rachel Freeman on the call. Or, yeah.
If she doesn't magically reappear, I can take it too.
Okay. Rachel, are you with us?
So I'll get started. And if she joins us, she can take over. Sorry. So this project was for, yes, sorry about that. I was just trying to get in touch with Rachel. So this project was for the boardwalk at 35 Almanac Pond Road. If you guys remember, you can look at the figures that are there. This was a stretch of boardwalk that spanned kind of around a couple wetlands and then to get across a wetland section. That's there. She is on her way for going. We had talked about it before, and you guys had asked for some educational signage that they've put in and some photos of the actual walkway, which were included in the pack. I think given what's there, I feel like they've met the requirements of the permit and that the project is in compliance. That makes sense.
Yeah, I appreciated the photos and the signage asking people to stay on the boardwalk. That's definitely really important going through the wetlands. So I know I appreciated that.
I'll say too, personally, I actually really like the sign.
It is. It's a nice design. Maureen, did you have a comment?
Well, I was going to say that as well. I love, hiking around there, and that's just, it's so, I mean, you really feel immersed in it, when you're going over it, on the boardwalk. So I know it's somewhat intrusive, but it really puts you more into the wetland. So I'm really glad how they've done it, and the signs are really good too.
Rachel's here.
Thank you, Maureen. Rachel, do you have anything you'd like to add about the 35 Almanac Pond Road?
I think Rachel is also having a little technical difficulty. I think that was the problem before. Oh, maybe she's back.
So I can't hear you guys. I don't know why. So I'm not sure if you can hear me, but I can't hear you.
We can hear, yeah, we can hear her.
Oh, wait, there. Now I hear you. Thank you.
So to catch up, we described what the project was and went through, and everyone was saying very nice things about your signage, and Maureen said that she really likes hiking through there.
Oh, good. Okay, fabulous. Thank you.
Looks like Joe has a question or comment.
So through the chair, it's just a personal question. It's not really anything required, but so I've gone walking in your other boardwalks and they get a little slick with the nice pressure treated wood. And so I saw this detail, and it was a mountain bike park, so I apologize for this, but like an 8 to 12 inch wide chicken wire mesh put over the top of it. So on the wet days, you could walk on the chicken wire and it didn't slip and slide. I don't know if that's some other detailing you kind of think about for a later date, but that was something I saw that might be a detail you want to consider or look into some other options.
Did you say 8 to 12 inches wide?
Right down the center of the path.
Yep.
So if it ever gets slick, you just walk on that chicken wire and it's all pinned
Okay,
down on every board.
that's
Just
interesting.
where that boardwalk undulates. And
Yep.
I thought it was really fun, but I was like, what happens on a wet day? What happens in,
Oh, completely. Right.
yeah. So just something to think about.
And dogs wouldn't mind. It's just the middle.
It's just the middle they walk on either side. I think that was kind of, I did see it wider, but I thought with dogs, I think if you could keep it narrower, and I think if it was just someone's walking path, gate distance,
Right.
something to consider, not.
Yeah, no, it's good feedback. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Mark?
I have a question for Joe, if I may. Am I going to see your bike on that, or are you really walking on it, Joe?
I'm going to take the fifth.
I knew that was coming.
If no one's around, I will ride it. If there's someone around, I walk it or I wait for them to pass. So
I knew that was coming.
Ian's going to join me next time.
Yeah, I'll be the one that goes off the edge, no doubt.
Oh boy. Any other comments or questions about this project? All right. So Jeff, do we have everything we'd need to issue the certificate?
Yes.
Is there a motion to issue?
So
Also move.
So I'll give the motion to Ian and the second to Mark. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Arisman, I, Golding,
Aye.
LaFleur,
Aye.
Phillips,
Aye.
Topham.
Aye.
All right, that carries unanimously. Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you.
All right, and that moves us on to orders of conditions. So Jeff sent these out to us earlier. And we will begin with Nantucket Conservation Foundation and Town of Nantucket at Medui Creek.
Yes, sorry, this is one that I missed last time while I was away. This was for the Oyster Reef project with NCF and Natural Resources Department in Pulpus Harbor. I had a monitoring report, and then the only other condition that I had, because it comes up from time to time, is that the area may need to be marked either with buoys or to mark a water closure or something. So I just put the condition that the applicant will be responsible to mark that area as directed by the Shellfish Constable in case it comes up.
Thank you, Jeff. Do any commissioners have anything they would like to add to this one? Seth?
Yeah, just quickly, the applicant indicated already their intention to put buoys and marking, so there shouldn't be any objection to that on their side.
Thank you, Seth. Anything else from commissioners? And if not, is there a motion to approve as drafted? It looks like Maureen's making that motion. And seconded by Dave. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Arisman, I, Golding,
Aye.
LaFleur,
Aye.
Phillips,
Aye.
Topham.
Aye.
All right, that carries unanimously. Thank you, everyone. And that moves us on to Moline at 27 Winoma Way.
We continue that tonight, Madam Chair.
Yep, I don't have it written down on my list, so I don't know why I said it. So Nantucket Islands Land Bank at 15 Commercial Wharf.
So this was the project that was to remove what is currently Mickey Rowland's architectural office from the site and do a little bit of regrading and then just seeding it. So the only condition that I had included was to just provide yearly photographs of that site just to make sure that the vegetation takes hold. something tells me that there may be back for another application to tie it into the other project at Petrol Landing a bit at some point, but I think they're a bit away from that. That's total speculation for me, by the way.
I imagine the same. Do any commissioners have anything they want to add? And if not, is there,
was drafted.
perfect. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Mark. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Arisman, I, Golding,
Aye.
LaFleur,
Aye.
Phillips,
Aye.
Topham.
Aye.
All right, that carries unanimously. And that moves us on to Abrams Point LLC at 34 Shakamo Road.
So this was for the cart path that was there. I had just included our kind of general monitoring condition, the condition that no cultivars be used. And then just in case, I've been starting to include this on any restoration site where there's some level of disturbance. Just because is that any invasive species be removed if it comes up.
Thank you, Jeff. That's a good one to remove or to add, excuse me.
Yep.
Does anybody else have anything they want to add to this one? Like, no. So is there a motion to approve as drafted?
Motion to approve?
Is there a second? Seconded by Dave. So by roll vote, Beal,
I don't understand what Joe is doing, but I'll vote aye.
It's a doctored, clearly a doctored map.
too busy with the puppy. I didn't see what the background change there.
Aye.
Arisman, I, Golding,
Aye.
LaFleur,
Aye, aye, aye.
Philip,
Aye.
Topham.
Aye.
All right, that carries unanimously. And that moves us on to Thomas Keegan at 41B Cliff Road.
All right, so this is the one on Cliff Road that was for the kind of reconfiguration of the patio. And I did have a couple findings related to the land subject coastal storm floods being on the site. And then I also, just for the building department, included that the pool and cabana are located outside of the commission's jurisdiction because they're shown on the plan. But then I put in that finding, in addition, the pool may not be drained or discharged into the commission's jurisdiction. So I just wanted to make that clear. And then I was going to also recommend adding a condition 19 that all debris in the buffer zone be removed by hand.
Jeff, I know that the pool is out of jurisdiction, but should we still like regulate that a pool operator is on like record with you? This site just screams like we can dump it into the wetland and nobody's gonna see us.
The problem with that is the pool itself is located out of jurisdiction. The way I put it, because I did think about that, I put it as it's a preventative statement to protect something from entering it. I'm not sure that we have the ability to force them to register who's monitoring the pool with it physically being outside of our legal authority. Sorry.
I totally understand that. So thank you for talking it through anyway. Any other thoughts, or would somebody like to approve as amended?
Approve as amended.
All right, so I'll give the motion to Joe. Dave, did you want the second? Okay, so by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Arisman, I, Golding,
Aye.
LaFleur,
Aye.
Phillips,
Aye.
Topham.
Aye.
All right, that carries unanimously. And we did not close the last one. So that moves us on to other business, approval of minutes from February 25th. Oh, Ian?
Yes, so sorry I didn't warn you earlier, Terry, but looking over them a second time, on page 3, where orders of conditions for the Conservation Foundation for the head of the plains, it actually should read, it should read clip and drip rather than clip and rip, no matter how one might feel. So I move that we.
It sounds a little bit like my fingers are getting tired.
There we go. So I move to approve as amended.
Thank you, Ian. Is there a second? Seconded by Joe. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Arisman, I, Golding,
Aye.
LaFleur,
Aye.
Phillips,
Aye.
Topham.
Aye.
All right, that carries unanimously. Thank you, Terry, for the minutes always. We're so lucky. That moves us on to reports. We have crack.
So at Crack, we had a pretty interesting meeting specifically with an update from Rob McNeil on plans for the first bridge, second bridge, North Cambridge Street culvert and Nantucket ditch works. And so Rob had a discussion with Jen Carberg of whether one of the dynamics between clearing a ditch as opposed to leaving it alone with sea level rise. And then there was a discussion about bridges versus culverts. And then it turned out that Rob said there was a top secret inventory going on, the DPW, he was joking obviously, that they're having a condition assessment from Turtle Pond on the Pulpus Road to the Gatehouse at Walwynnet for checking out every culvert there. And then there was this sort of, we touched on apparently in the Folger Marsh, there's a, thanks to private funding, there is an engineering study going on at the moment as to the feasibility of raising the road 3 feet. And there's also a discussion going on about for Sackcha, whether a raised causeway style road would be a possibility. And he mentioned that they're having an engineer look to see whether wave attenuators would be feasible to manage the edge of the pond to allow for consistent wave action. So I thought my fellow commissioners would be interested in that.
Oh, I'm sorry I missed that meeting. That all sounds really, really interesting.
It was. So
maybe we can get him to give us a taste of it out in Madtucket. A lot of stuff that's really, really interesting.
Yeah. And I assume it'll be on the town website. To, I don't have the time actually demarcated, but I could probably dig it out for you, Maureen. If that would be helpful, I'll email you when it.
Thank you. That'd be great.
Sure.
Thank you for the update, Ian. Does anybody have any questions? No. So we'll move on to CPC.
Madam Chair, I have nothing to report. No meeting.
Great, thank you. So NP and EDC.
We don't meet until Monday.
Thank you, Maureen. So this moves us on to monitoring reports.
None tonight.
Nothing tonight. So commissioners' comments.
Oh, well, could we have a quick verbal update about Netco in light of what's been going backwards and forwards, Madam Chair, through to Jeff, through
Oh,
you? Thank you.
it's
Yeah.
coming. So
Yeah.
just be patient, my
Okay.
friend.
It's what?
It's coming. Once we get to my section, I'm going to
Ah.
grind us to a halt for a few minutes.
Okay. Sorry for jumping the gun there.
No problem. In addition to the Netco site, I talked to Jeff about a few different property enforcements over the last week or so. So hopefully he'll have some updates for us. Any other commissioners' comments? Looks like no. So we will give it over to Jeff with administrator staff reports.
Sure. So I've got a couple things I'll try to run through. We do have one public comment from Spruce again, that he is loving Fig's input to the meeting. So that's a plus. So just to kind of run through, I know Ashley and I have been talking about, but to circle back while it's still fresh in everyone's memory, back to the order for 41B Cliff Road, where we were talking about the pool and regulating the pool. Not specific to this property, but I know it's something, and I know I've talked to Ashley about it a few times, that the public health director and I have been trying to move forward some illicit discharge regulations for about 3 years now. And it's just been very slow going for a lot of reasons, and it was going to get wrapped into stormwater. And it's been problematic, but there's a whole section on those that relates to pools that I think is really kind of germane to what we were talking about. And I think it really ties back a little bit into what Seth talked about 2 meetings ago, because I don't think they guys talked about it last time in reviewing, and I know we sent it around to everyone, the original enabling legislation for the Conservation Commission. One of the things that it allows the commission to do, because it's Pre-Wetlands Protection Act, is to regulate and create standards and regulations relative to the protection of watersheds. And I think what's interesting about that is I think it may be an avenue, and I've kind of kicked it up the tree to council a little bit, that this commission may be able to review and adopt those outside of our regular wetlands regulations as watershed protection regulations as allowed for by the local act. And then at some point, if the select board decides to adopt them or a little bit different version of them, is the commission can always release them to there or deal with it. But I think it's a way to try to get those in place. So I'm going to send the copy of that around to everybody to see and take a look at and kind of see what we were thinking about. And to do that, we'd probably have to adopt the watershed areas as well, probably related to the 2 harbors and the kind of the 4 great ponds first and deal with it there. I don't think we'd want to deal with like all the little tiny, like there's Capon Ponds watershed and Maxie's Ponds watershed, and deal with that for right now. I think it would be wiser to start with well-established watersheds and ones I have enough work behind them to make sure that they're defendable. But I think that may be an interesting approach to try to kind of foster that along, or even, I hate to say it this way, the threat of you guys doing it may spur it on back into action faster. So, because there's a lot of things, it's dewatering, groundwater discharges, kind of site maintenance and controls, pools are included. But we've been trying to move it a little bit, and hopefully that will help. So thank you, Seth, for bringing that up, and I'll get that to everybody in the interim with that little preface that's there. As for enforcements and things that are going on, again, if anyone has any other ones, please feel free to send them in. We've recently been in contact with the owner of the property at 300 Pulpus Road. There have been some concerns on that property about their restoration area and their parking area for where they had moved their cars. There was a little parking strip that was approved. We're just trying to confirm with them that it's located in the correct location, that hasn't been extended too far, and that all of the plantings that they were required to do were in place. That was a site where we had a lot of pickup and debris, and I know they moved like a car out of the wetland in that project too. But we're just trying to deal with some issues that seem to be a little bit in flux and try to get those nailed down. The second one that Ashley contacted me about, and we're kind of pooling up the list a little bit. Kind of walked the beach the other day just to go through. There's been some question and concern about kind of the seasonal vertical bulkhead extensions on Holborn Avenue that have gone in. I know a lot of them have gone in for a long time and have a bit of a history, but it's essentially, a sheet of plywood that's screwed down or attached to the top of the existing timber bulkheads that are there to essentially provide like another, in some cases, 3 to 4 foot high barrier on top of the existing bulkheads. So I've been looking into that and been trying to also speak with, Nate and Mark at DEP about their thoughts on it. And, if they see that on the Cape or other spots on, further up the coast, and how if anyone's dealt with those before, or, how we deal with a temporary structure like that and make sure that it's legal or done correctly, or if it needs to be corrected, that we can issue that out to all of them. It's not every one of them, but it's a pretty fair amount. I think there's about 12 or 13 properties that are affected by that kind of practice. So that kind of runs through those two. Currently, we don't have any outstanding tickets. The last round of tickets that we've sent for 119 Baxter, we were hoping to we had a court hearing scheduled with them last week. We were hoping that they were going to appear and that the judge would order them to make sure that they appeared in front of the commission. About 30 minutes before their hearing, they decided to pay their ticket and canceled the hearing instead of appealing their ticket. So now we're back to issuing them yet another ticket. So we're kind of just moving through the process. That's a similar thing they're at with the old Hollywood Farm property on Pulpus Road, where they just continually pay tickets, and for whatever reason, seemingly going there. So we're working with the police to kind of further that along. And there's a couple other outstanding issues with some other town departments now as well. So we're kind of moving that one through, but keeping it there, and they keep paying their $50 fine. So hopefully at some point we'll make some progress. To get to the bigger one that's kind of come up in the last, kind of week or less. I think everyone's seen, and I know some pictures have been around about some work that was happening down in front of 79 Baxter Road on the old core terraces there. I know the Coastal Conservancy and Burton sent some photos in, and we've been working on that. And there's been a little bit of a kind of a change in what's happened there. So our recommendation is going to be a little interesting on this. And speaking to the folks at DEP about it today, and kind of running through our options. And this is kind of a path that we set on after talking to them, and they agreed that this was probably the smartest thing to do. There's obviously some concerns that there was some work that's visible below what the rack line is. And the rack line isn't necessarily indicative of where high water is, but in situations where it's that close, I think everyone felt that prudently high water should have been staked and marked so people knew not to cross it without knowing where it is. And, anecdotal evidence be what it may, there's clearly water that flows up to the bottom of that on a regular enough basis to put the rack line kind of landward of the seaward edge of those core bags to deal with it. So after talking to them, I think they felt that probably issuing out an enforcement action was probably the best idea, and issuing out an enforcement action against SE 48 1602, and I'll get the number wrong. It's 1657 is the other one. And instead of doing what we normally do and where we just issue to the applicant, I think given the problems that we've had in the past and the varying response, and after talking to them, I think we feel that it's important in this case to issue to both the permit holder. So the permit holder and both of those permits is the Wisconsin Beach Preservation Fund, to issue a separate one to the property owner, which is the town of Nantucket, and to issue a separate one from even those two to 79 Baxter Road, who is benefiting from the protection of that structure, to ensure that someone responds. So that all being said, and that's our recommendation at the end, we also tried to reach out to Netco and came to find out today one of the reasons we've been having trouble is Netco is no longer Netco. Netco was purchased by a larger company, and a lot of their contact information and things have changed. They've been absorbed by a company called, I say it wrong, it's either Sumco or Semco, and some of the personnel and folks that supervise that have changed. I know Mr. Lager, who had been with Netco, has moved over to that company as well. I tried to reach out to their kind of regional supervisor for Nantucket to talk about the problem that's there, and just in waiting to hear back from them. I kind of got through that process later in the day and then was running up against executive session. So I just kind of left a message and told them I try to connect with them tomorrow to get them up to speed. So that's kind of where we are with all of that. So again, I think our recommendation is to issue that out. And one of those three parties is the property owner, the previous applicant and permit holder, or the property owner who we've been told is responsible for doing the work by the applicant in that case. One of them is responsible, and we will get whoever that is in front of us to answer for what seems to be a pretty clear violation, and to set forward a path to rectify it. DEP has kind of explained to us that they would recommend trying to find a way to either close out that old permit if there's not a certificate of compliance in some way, or putting together some sort of conditions for work through the enforcement to try to update that order of conditions to some degree. So I think those were good suggestions from those folks. So, and it's nice that they think that that's okay to do, because that hasn't always been the case, but I think that's helpful. So I think that's our kind of plan of attack on this, and I'm happy to answer any questions, and we'll go from there.
Thank you, Jeff. It looks like Ian has some questions, and then Seth.
Yes, so, the fact is it's impassable when the tide's in, and you have to, you have to hike yourself up onto the choir bags to get around. So at what point do we say remove them, or remove enough of them so that there's public access, between low and high tide?
So I actually asked that specific question to the folks at DEP today, because I don't think that it's not an uncommon issue to do that. So I think the question of what happens when a peninsula starts to form and how you deal with that, hopefully we'll get some guidance from them. But I think when we bring them in front to do that, we will hopefully be able to create a strategy to do exactly what you're saying, Ian.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, Jeff. Joe?
I feel like this core role is starting to starve the rest of the system, where I think, and I'm going to be the bad guy, but I feel like SBF is still dumping sand over. But this, if anyone site is going to have a negative impact along this area, this is going to be the site. It's not providing any sand to the littoral system. So I really think that if someone's going to bring a lawsuit, I would go to that direction. I just really feel like Netco, or whoever they are now, has been dragging their feet, and this is going to be problematic later on because they just haven't been doing what their application says. And I think it's going to be a big issue later on, or now. Thank you.
And may I, Madam Chair, just reaffirm what Joseph is saying, that when I was out there a couple of months ago or last month during the storms, it was really noticeable, the dip in the beach around there as the tide went out. So there was clearly a deficit there. Anecdotal, I understand, Jeff, but
No, but that's, so all of those things stack up, right? So when we have that conversation about it, people are seeing adverse impacts. That's exactly what it's supposed to do. I mean, I think if that project had been permitted under a current order of conditions, our review would be very different. So I did forget to add in our recommendation for that enforcement would also include the cease and desist. And if necessary, we can provide that cease and desist to those folks in person if they're there working. So we can make that happen pretty effectively.
Thank you, Jeff. Seth?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just thinking logistically, it's my understanding that both these orders are expired, right?
Correct.
Yeah, so I mean, hopefully one of those three parties responds and comes before us, but if the project is sufficiently out of compliance, an expired order that's unlikely to be able to put back into compliance and therefore receive a certificate of compliance, is it possible to either, have a removal order to void the permit? I guess you can't void an expired permit, but or to somehow compel them to bring a new order of conditions to deal with these issues.
The easy answer to that is yes. So I think in the process when you come in is you can say that they need to address the sand and working issues and fix the violation. And if it's not something that can be brought into compliance enough to receive a certificate of compliance for, then they will need to file a new notice to do the work to bring it into compliance. Or you order it through the enforcement action and say, this is what needs to be done. And you simply just condition it as such. And if they can't, then I think you can have grounds to take alternative steps to either modify what's there or take more drastic action as well. So I think that gives some options. But I think when we get to the point where we're talking about something of that extreme, is I will make sure that George is with us to make sure that we are doing it in the correct and proper manner.
Thank you, Jeff. Joe?
Thank you. Through the chair to Jeff. Would this be something Greg Berman should be looking at, where he's looking at SPPF's reports? Is this something over time where they haven't been putting the 5,000 cubic yards over the bank? Is that something he should be writing a report, and what impacts that would have?
Yes, I think the difficulty, and this is kind of the frustration with this whole stretch of project, is the conditions that were written, the requirements for reporting and monitoring are vastly different. I know that the amounts there, and the other problem, having gone through it now a little bit, is the permitted area is much bigger than just 79 Baxter Road. So the amount of nourishment that was going on is kind of across a greater area. And I think we'd have to back figure to what was supposed to be going on 79, specifically to deal with that lot in specific. And the other problem that remains with a lot of this too is it's also not currently licensed by the town, because that license is also expired. So the town also hasn't done enough due diligence to make sure that it's meeting the conditions of the license that expired in like 2010. So it's a big mess. And I think issuing these out is a step towards trying to clean them up. And then between all of us here, I'm also hopeful that as we go through the other resiliency look at Baxter Road, is there maybe a better long-term plan that comes out for this area that even could be, moving houses or relocating roads or dealing with it, that provides an end to all of these structures at some point too. So hopefully that kind of comes to pass.
Go ahead, Joe.
To you, Madam Chair, do you think that this is a letter we should write to the select board and say this is another violation on that same street that just they're not taking us seriously, or the town, that they're causing major impacts?
Yeah, so in this case, we're sending an enforcement to the town. So they'll get the message, I think. I don't know that they need another letter, Jeff.
So just to let everyone know, when we send out an enforcement order, right, there's the slick little DEP form that you guys sign, is we always send a letter kind of from the staff level that explains what people are getting. Because a lot of times people get that form and it's hard to follow when they don't understand. So a lot of times we'll also send just a little bit of a cover letter that says you're receiving this enforcement action because on said date, and we'll include we include photos, we include any mapping that we have, just so people can see kind of what it was based on. And when something that says, at the March 11th, 2021 Conservation Commission meeting, the commission voted to issue out this enforcement action for the following reasons, and give them a little bit more detail, and then, and then make sure that they also have our contact information. So when they get it and they want to yell and scream at somebody, they know where to call. And then we can kind of get them in to say, all right, so we want you to be at the 325 meeting, or when they get it to say, we want you to be at the, the first meeting in April. This is what's going to be expected of you. This is what's going to go on. This is the information you need to provide in advance, and this is being provided by, and go from there. So they don't still get it cold.
All right. One last question, and I apologize. Does it make sense for us to issue a letter to the town select board and then follow up and attend the Zoom meeting to have it discussed, or really bring it to the forefront? Because I think it's in their inbox, but it's not really discussed. And I think if we could bring it to the public forum, because I think a lot of people are sitting at home nowadays watching on YouTube, watching the select board meetings, and I think this would be a really important piece to bring it forward and put some light on it. Or if the Inky is watching, I think that they should also be reporting on some of these stories. I kind of expand their story, SPPF, but what else is going on? We got 117 Bax Road, we have, this property, and, Netco, and whoever they're called now. But I think there's a larger problem that's going on that I really think that we should shed some more light on if we could, or some way, shape, or form.
Totally. So I think to do that, if you guys were going to go, obviously, if you all attend a meeting, there's some shenanigans. If you designated someone to do that, if they wanted to talk about it at the meeting, if it was scheduled, I think if you guys picked a person to go, that would probably be the easiest way for them a member of the commission to represent the commission in front of the select board about whatever we're going to send. And you guys can wrestle it out for whoever that's going to be. So I'll leave that up to you guys. Or you can have like a bike off, whatever you want. So
sounds like Joe wants to do it.
Squeaky
whenever he stopped on his bike. I see you.
It would have to be a handicapped bike off. I can tell you that right now. But it's sort of a chicken and egg situation, isn't it? In other words, shouldn't have the owner of 79 Baxter Road have gone to the town as well, or is there a separation there? Could you explain that to me, Jeff? I'm being slow on the uptake here, I guess.
Yeah. So kind of what's happened, and this is how I understand it. So someone may come along that 100% contradicts what I'm about to say, but from our recent discussions and kind of going through it, the permits that were gotten in the kind of the middle 2000s, right, for these core, the time they called them core terraces and a little bit of core logs. So they came in and got the permits, and they were permits for an area based upon the addresses on Baxter Road. So kind of how we still do it, where, like the geotubes are from, 83 to 109 or wherever they are. And these were done this way. And those permits were gotten by SPPF at the time. And it was on town land, and they got a license to use it. And then what happened as far as management goes is it seems like they turned over the management to the individual property owners that lived along Baxter Road and said, you guys are responsible for scheduling your individual maintenance on your individual lot. And the license ran with the whole host of everything. And in the interim, some folks decided not to put anything in. Some people installed and have it in varying states. Some really actively maintained. I think 79 is probably the biggest piece where it's clearly been actively maintained the most and the longest of the whole stretch. And in the interim, properties change hands and things happen, is the license expired. And unfortunately, it's not something where they got a letter that says, from the town, says, hey, your license is going to expire, or they weren't, no one had put on the calendar, hey, in 2010, our license expires, we need to get back on top of it, and we need to get relicensed. And then it kind of disappeared into the abyss of, rock revetments and things that were being proposed for kind of that longer stretch and getting rolled in, and, everything's going to get relicensed if this gets approved. And a lot of these things happen, and from both sides, both the town and from the homeowners to SPDF sides, I think people just got lax and stopped paying attention to it as much as it needed to be paid attention to. And I'm not going to make excuses for anyone. No one involved did their job to the best that they should have been doing it. So that's kind of where we are with a lot of these that are, there's no active license. The permits are expired. We've been doing maintenance, and it's been covered up by the mask of the larger, more obvious project, and the project that's been discussed more lately and what's been going on. And for better or for worse, it's fallen into a state where it shouldn't be.
Through you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Jeff, for sort of fleshing that out. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yeah, and Jeff, I have a question along the lines of what you just said. So can the commission's role in open space, I can't stop it. It's either attack me or the speaker. Can the commission's role in open space have an impact on like the town licensing land for structures? Like, can we have a role in that decision-making through that legislation?
I think that's a really good question, and I don't know the answer to that. I'd have to look into that a little bit and probably get some answer from council a little bit. I know the ability for town-owned land to be, sold or used by a private entity. The authority for that use lies kind of twofold in some cases. It either lies within town meeting or it lies within the Board of Selectmen, depending upon what the use is going to be. Traditionally here, and kind of I think how it's been, leasing use for land that's town owned for private use has been something that's been done through the select board. I also know that there's a bylaw on the books for the town now that the leasing or use of land and town owned property for this very specific purpose requires authorization from town meeting to do. So I don't know how that plays into a structure that was, it'd be weird to say, a structure that was constructed under a license before that bylaw was enacted. I am not the person to answer that question if that bylaw would now apply to relicensing that structure. That is definitely for our learned counsel to answer more clearly, because that isn't both my pay grade question. So that's kind of the long and the short of it.
Jeff, Seth?
Thank you. So obviously there's our jurisdiction, the wetlands regulations that these entities are out of compliance with, but it also sounds like they're out of compliance with the town's licensing procedure, but that's not really our jurisdiction. Does the town know that they're out of compliance? Will this letter be telling them that they're out of compliance? And is there any way to influence the town into taking up or compel them into taking up their own hearing about the lack of compliance on the licensing side of things?
So in a really interesting twist, and hopefully I won't get yelled at this for tomorrow, but it would be interesting to see, and I think we'd have to do some checking, is if through the enforcement process, is if the thing you could ask the town to do would be to relicense it or to have that discussion. That I think you could probably do, but to reaffirm their authorization of use of the town-owned property for this project is essentially, I think, what she would do is to affirm that it may be used. And I think that would compel them to probably have to get an active license. And that's a simple question to ask. Say is, are you guys still allowing this use on the town-owned property? And if they say, well, we have an expired license, then say, well, is that a yes or is that a no? And then it kind of puts it to them. So I think that's a fair question to ask. I do believe that they are aware that that license is not currently active at this point.
And the Board of Selectmen issues a license, Jeff?
Yes, sir.
And I agree with Jeff. I think the town is definitely aware, both the Board of Selectmen and town management, that there are unlicensed structures per their licensing. So they know.
And to be fair, not just to the core terraces in this case, is you know, we've been chasing, and I know Rick Atherton especially, and he and I have talked about it more times than I like to remember. There are a number of sets of even like stairs down the coastal bank that aren't licensed that are on town-owned land technically. So there's a lot of issues, and it's not just exclusive to Sconset in some cases, but
yeah.
this is the most obvious one where, you know, people were doing, and I'll even say back in the good old days where, you know, I mean, I can tell you specifically, I permitted a set of stairs at 67 Baxter Road that crossed town-owned property. And I came into the commission and got an order of conditions for those stairs. And I don't even think we asked the town for permission. It just did it. And that's just, you weren't doing it at the time, right? It wasn't totally uncommon to do. And it's just, it's a different time. And I think people have learned that that's something that should have been going on. So there's, you know, lessons learned over a long time.
Thank you. Oh, Joe?
But does that go back to the stair we were talking about tonight, that Jeff Blackwell's application? That fall into that?
No, that's that the town-owned property ends well before that.
Okay, that's just making sure.
No, and we're pretty good about asking about that now for sections of Baxter Road. So, again, that was something that used to happen more. You don't see it as much now. That the watchful eye of, you know, everyone watching Baxter Road and you know, parcel 49.9 and parcel 48.8, I think, is much more watchful than what it used to be.
But this is where I think getting on the select board's agenda is really important, because it sheds light to, they have to have a conversation about it in front of the public.
I would not
I'll brace anyone to go to the meeting.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be happy to go to the meeting and raise this publicly again to them. I don't honestly have confidence it'll make any difference on their path out there. I just think they have other things that they're dealing with that do not involve wetlands, unfortunately. And I don't know how much pestering we would need to do to change that. But I'm not confident we're the ones who can pester them to change direction, unfortunately. But again, that's just a lot of recent perspective, I think. Maureen, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I really agree with what Joe has been saying. And while, you know, it's not like they're all going to, you know, cringe at the sight of you, even with all the rest of us standing behind you holding signs. I mean, they're not going to collapse and decide that something has to be done. But I think if we're very specific about and putting on the public record things like the fact that the license has expired, you know, eons ago. And these things, you know, this needs to be taken care of, and this needs to be taken care of, and this needs to be taken care of. And so that if there's a kind of a, you know, a menu of the things that are hanging fire that really impact what's going on going forward, and we've got people in violation, and, you know, there's so many different things that if we just kind of laid it out, it's the kind of thing that maybe, you know, the Inky might pick up on. I mean, it could get people's attention more, you know, beyond, and the select board, you know, they certainly do care about what the townspeople think. So it's more, I'd say we'd be speaking more to the townspeople, perhaps than the select board per se. But I think I personally would think it's the place to do it, but we need to put together kind of a kind of very concise list of things. So, but I really like your idea, Joe.
Well, how about I'll draft up that list. We won't slow down on issuing out the EOs, but I'll put together that list for everyone, and we'll add it as an agenda item on our next agenda to review the letter and timeline to issue.
Great.
Joe?
And what about the fines while we're talking about this? Is this another time can we finalize the fines? Is that something we can do, or?
I think that's up for one of the meeting dates we have nailed down to try and deal with regulations and fines.
I think that's one of the meetings, the extra meetings that we were able to schedule towards the end of March. But yes.
Thank you.
So Jeff, before we move on too far, you need us to make a motion to issue those enforcements, correct?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, is there seconded by Joe? So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Garrisman, I, Golding,
Aye.
LaFleur,
Aye.
Phillips,
Aye.
Topham.
Aye.
All right, that carries unanimously. Wanted to make sure to get that done. And then it sounds like Jeff will work to try and get a letter somewhat drafted, and we can discuss it at our next meeting.
Yes.
And I know I'm happy to go in front of the select board if nobody else wants to, or we can take a vote on who wants to go or have a volunteer. I think really anybody could do it.
Happy to push you under the bus, Ashley.
Been laying there for a while, so.
Oh, God.
So Jeff, is what, Ian? Sorry.
I didn't say that. That was.
I think that's it for me for now. That's enough trouble for one night.
See, and Joe, how can you be leaving us? I mean,
I'm sorry.
I mean,
Yeah, it's true, Joe. You bring so much to this. It's.
Thank you.
That's right.
It was not an easy decision.
We should send Joe to the select board. If you like.
That's why I'm going to go down in flames. Why not?
That's right.
yeah.
Boy, he
So
is
you can
getting
go
big,
out.
Ashley.
Hey, whoa, wait a minute. Where were you going, Joe? I was at the last meeting. What was announced?
I'm not re-upping.
Joe sent us a very nice
Bad day.
letter and everything.
You did? That's nice, Joe. But don't
I
go.
didn't know what protocol was, so I wrote a letter. I think that the select board should know as soon as possible, and you also know, and look for some good candidates to replace me. So
Yeah. So if people do know someone that is interested at all, especially if they have any questions, I'm happy to talk to anybody about it and kind of what's entails. You know.
When's the
definitely encourage
deadline?
people
Do you know, Jeff?
No, I don't even think have papers even gone out yet for re-upping.
It's in May usually.
When's your
Yeah,
term end, Joe? Coming up?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's April or
So-
May. It's a while.
Yeah, they come out then, and terms start on the 1st of July.
Yeah, and I think the application paperwork is due like the last week in May usually.
And I will say, of all years, this is the year. Make sure that it is in on time.
yes.
'Cause I think they are really going to be
Yes.
sticklers for deadlines this year after the events of last year. So I would
Just-
suggest early.
So seeing as how I know some people have had their shots, I know that Ashley, being a teacher, you're going to be up for your shots. Seth, do you know, or Joanne and Jeff, do you know when you guys might be getting your shot?
I have heard rumors that the next phase for phase 2 people may open up for frontline workers and those kinds of folks maybe next week, but that is rumor. I don't even really have that for good sources, but that's
Phase 2, Group 3 is next week.
that's what's going around.
It
So
would be nice before I leave to have one meeting together again. So
well,
Seth, age quickly. Stop waiting that beard up.
we'll get him one of those like Zorb balls. You know, we'll put him in like a bubble. The rest of us may have our shots in. Seth will be in the bubble, and we'll get him there. Or
Oh,
scuba
boy.
tank or something.
They're coming at least. There's hope. But I agree, Joe. It'd be nice to meet together before you leave. I don't know what meeting space that would be in because we were supposed to get kicked out of the old space a while ago. So I think we're like homeless.
We'll just set up chairs in 131 Pleasant.
So
We'll
the
find
police
a
station
space.
is out now, Ashley?
Hmm?
The police station is gone for us?
We were supposed to get kicked out of there like forever ago.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm not sure where those plans are. I think a lot of plans to make a lot of changes and do things really got blown up by 2020.
All right, so I think we're done discussing Concom related issues. So is there a motion to adjourn?
How about puppy issues first?
I kind of held her up. She finally laid down.
She fallen
okay.
asleep finally.
She's
Let sleeping,
exhausted.
let sleeping dogs
Sounded
lie,
like she
I
was
guess.
having a good time back there.
All right, if it makes you feel better, I guarantee that her mom is laying on a couch right now, just doing nothing. So
I was worried she was going to drag you off your chair, Ashley, that you were suddenly going to disappear in mid-sentence.
Yep, there was definitely potential for that. So not tonight, but maybe in a future meeting.
I'll move to adjourn.
All right, is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Erisman, I, Golding,
Aye.
LaFleur,
Aye.
Phillips,
Aye.
Topham.
Aye.
All right, that carries unanimously. Thank you, everybody.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you,
Yep.
Ashley. Thank
Good night,
you.
everyone.
Night, night.
Good night, everybody.